Hello, everyone. I see some comments already. How is everyone? Hi. Yes, I do sometimes go on camera, you friends. So, welcome to the channel. I hope everyone's having a good day. There is a lot to talk about, and I have to try to figure out where I'm looking. Okay, camera's right there. I am using my Mac camera right now. So, I usually use a different camera, but I have to be looking at the screen because there's a lot that we have to go over. And I'm pretty, there's so much. And I have some clips that I have shared in different videos that I think are relevant to what was recently filed in court. And I recognize that some of you have probably already had an opportunity to um, find some of this information out. But welcome. So Ryan Reynolds is kind of a hot mess, and he recently filed a motion to dismiss. And here's the thing: federal court is a motions to dismisses in federal court are extremely hard to have pass. Like for a judge to grant a motion to dismiss, there has to be a finding of like a technical issue of law. It has nothing to do with the facts of the case. So it has to be a technical issue. It has nothing to do with the stated claims. It has to do with like, are we in the right venue? Do we have they stated a claim? Have they properly pleaded the case? Is there, it's very technical. And I know this personally because I've been involved in a federal case where I actually was successful on a motion to dismiss and I won based on venue. So one of the reasons why they're likely fighting about California is because of venue. And if they say it's not the proper venue, then the judge can dismiss and then it can go to the proper venue. And then the interesting thing about arguments about proper venue are that Blake Lively brought California claims into New York, and yet everyone that's on Blake's side now is arguing that California law doesn't apply to Justin Baldoni and Wayfair, but it applies for Blake. So what I notice a lot about with Blake and Ryan is that it's rules for the, not for me. And it's just very much the way that narcissists rule the world. I won a federal case when I had my motion dismissed. And I've gone through the process of having a motion to dismiss. I've also gone through the process of having a motion not dismissed. So I know how challenging motions to dismiss are. And right now, I'm not sure that these specific issues are going to be up to par. And again, it's not my place to decide what the court's going to do. But I think what his findings here show, or what his response shows, is that Ryan Reynolds kind of lives in a world where the rules don't apply. And I think he's very mentally ill. Like, I don't know, you guys, I'm just trying to do here, but it's interesting because he perceives Justin being a predator because of statements that Justin's made on his own podcast and in his TED Talk. Like, that's how Ryan has decided that Justin is a sexual predator. So just to give you an understanding,
Means as an aggressor to her little brother was like, oh my God, this is where it starts. And I don't know if anyone ever explained it to me like that when I was a little boy.
And what it does is it sets you up to have healthy relationships throughout your entire life, right? Mm-hmm. If you can learn as a child to set these boundaries and understand what you want for yourself and respect other people's boundaries, then you can, sort of go forward in in any relationship, whether it's, dating or platonic or what have you.
And this is where the porn conversation comes in, of course, but then when you hit 11 or 12 and your friends have a phone and maybe you don't, and you're being shown things on the phone for the first time, and that's cool. And then you start to think that that is what women want. And,
correct.
Porn, as we know, no means yes, or try harder, right? Mm-hmm. Quoting our good friend Ted Bunch at A Call to Men. Correct. It starts to become very confusing, which is definitely something that happened to me.
Yeah.
I'm sure I have crossed boundaries and lines in my teens and 20s, not even thinking about it, simply because of the porn I was consuming.
Okay. So I'm sharing that video with you because I want you guys to understand that this line that he just said right there, those of you that just watched that clip in the chat, did you see what he said? I'm sure that in my teens and my 20s, I may have crossed lines. Did you hear Justin Baldoni state that he was a predator? Did he define what these lines were that he believes he crossed? Crossing a line can be asking someone to go out too much. Crossing a line can be hugging someone when they don't want to be hugged. Does this statement that he just made, would you, if you were on a jury, if you heard someone say that, would you believe that this is a man that is admitting to you on a podcast that he has essayed someone? Okay, so you said he's trying to be self-aware and honest, right? Okay, awesome. So all you friends that are out there, I don't normally go live. So if you can do a good big favor, click the thumbs up so we get some thumbs ups going, and make sure that you share this video out if you want to. If there's people that are over on Reddit, I don't know if any of you are on any of the Justin Baldoni Reddits. If you want to share the video over there, I know that there's people that congregate. I don't post in there. But that's the basis of why Ryan believes that Justin is a predator. Okay. And I have been pretty flabbergasted as I've been going through this, if I'm going to be completely honest. Flabbergasted is to say it mildly. I think every single thing that they are doing on this case is aimed at PR, and it's all for public consumption. Generally speaking, these types of motions are not this. I mean, complaints rarely ever, you will rarely ever see a complaint that's 200 pages, right? So what I find interesting is Ryan Reynolds is really trying to separate himself from being involved in the scheme. And he's really doing everything that he can to try to act like all he was doing was trying to be a supportive spouse who witnessed firsthand the emotional, reputational, and financial devastation Miss Lively has suffered. So it says, so what has Ryan Reynolds have to do with that? Legally speaking, other than being a supportive spouse who has witnessed firsthand the emotional, reputational, and financial devastation she suffered. So the suffering here would imply that Mr. Reynolds believes that there's a smear campaign. And again, the lack of insight into her own behavior and his wife's own behavior, it kind of feels like these two live in a bubble where they don't want to take accountability for anything else. I mean, Justin certainly isn't the person that made Blake act a fool while she was out promoting this film. And it says Mr. Reynolds is a defendant in this action for one reason and one reason only, because billionaire plaintiff Steve Sarowitz promised to spend up to $100 million to ruin Miss Lively and Mr. Reynolds. Well, if that's true, what did you do to Mr. Sarowitz that would make him mad at you? If you had no opportunity, like if you had zero, absolutely zero, if you had zero to do with this, why would Steve Sarowitz care what you're doing? Why would he want to spend $100 million to ruin you if you weren't involved in something? It seems like an odd, like on the one hand, he's only doing this because Steve said this, but why would Steve want to sue you? Maybe because you did something to his company. I don't know. So it says the Sarowitz and his co-plaintiffs filed seeks to fulfill that promise by polluting this court's docket with hundreds of paragraphs of clickbait. Really? Okay. Designed for an audience other than this court with virtually no bearing or cognizable legal claims. It's interesting that in the very beginning of his motion to dismiss, he has addressed 0 reasons why this case should be dismissed. That whole paragraph right there was, as he would say, paragraphs of clickbait and designed for an audience other than court, because that whole paragraph makes 0 sense in a court. They want to, then he mentions that Wayfair wants to put out all of their evidence before the court and the public. Nothing wrong with that. That is a damning concession, given that the lack of actual evidence supporting any legally cognizable claim against Mr. Reynolds. Oh, you know what I find ironic about this specific issue here is that on the one hand, he wants the court to say, we're going to get rid of this motion. We want to get rid of this file. Let's get rid of this case. And please, by the way, because there's not enough information in this case. You didn't state a claim. You certainly didn't. The response shows that his attorneys do not have control over their client. I guarantee you that they strongly advised against this unhinged response. You know, I feel like his clients, thank you so much, Seashell Bells. What I will say is, I don't know, you know, I think that the attorneys are doing the best that they can. Here's the thing. When you're getting paid as an attorney, I don't know how much of an I don't really know how involved he is in this. Okay. I know that you generally will need to approve what's being posted for you or like filed for you. But having been a part of my own lawsuits, I definitely wasn't drafting the language of what my attorneys decided to say. That's up to them to litigate. And they're probably just, Ryan more than likely is asking his attorneys to put out everything and to use this maybe as another way to obliterate and humiliate Justin in public. But to be quite honest, every single side is doing that right now. It's not just Blake and Ryan doing this. Justin's whole case right now also is putting out receipts and putting out actually more evidence than you would need to when you file a complaint in federal court. So much of this case right now, in my opinion, is being done for PR. And it will, I mean, based on this motion to dismiss, I can't see how Justin won't want to go to trial, because he won't stop saying that Justin's a predator. But at the same time, you know, as they're going to be starting to be pushed for discovery, we'll have to see if they actually want to give it up. You know, people will settle for a lot of reasons. But he is out of his damn mind. You are correct. Sublime. Say allegedly, just so you don't get in trouble. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. Now he says that without pleading a single complete statement or identifying the time or place of such statement, nor can they become such a defamatory statement exist, nor such defamatory statements exist. Whoops. So he's trying to say that even though Justin Baldoni pleaded that Ryan Reynolds told people and was running around all of Hollywood, told their joint agents that he's a predator and that he's a schmexual predator, that he doesn't have a complete statement or identifying the time or place of such statement, which in fact they did. They identified that Ryan was telling people at the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere. That's a specific time and date. We all know when that was. And that he was telling people that, and the agent at WME that day. Okay. So he's trying to get out of this predator claim, which is interesting, because this case, I find it very ironic, because both Ryan and Leslie Sloan are playing this role of saying, on the one hand, I didn't defame you and you can't prove I ever said this. But on the other hand, if I did say it, it's true. So which one is it? Did you say it? Or did you not? Because if you said that he was a predator, especially a schmexual predator, and it caused actual damage to his reputation and he lost work, that's a actionable claim. And it doesn't have to be written. It doesn't have to be in a video. It can actually just be something that you publish by telling someone. And what Ryan was doing was publishing by telling people in the industry about what his thoughts were about Baldoni. This is maybe because Ryan's not from the United States and he's from Canada. Maybe he doesn't understand how the law works here. But he says Mr. Reynolds allegedly called Mr. Baldoni a predator, but the FAC alleges no plausible facts that suggest Mr. Reynolds did not believe this comment to be true. Okay, so first, again, he says that you're claiming that I said this, but if I said it, I believed it was true. Instead, the relevant FAC allegation suggests that Mr. Reynolds genuinely, perhaps passionately, believes that Mr. Baldoni's behavior is reflective of a predator. Now, reflective of a predator is very different than saying someone is a predator. Even if the FAC plausibly alleged that Mr. Reynolds called Mr. Baldoni a predator while believing the opposite, which it does not. All right. The law establishes that calling someone a predator accounts to constitutionally protected opinion. Do you see how many different excuses he used in there? Okay, so in that one paragraph, he said that it's he can't identify a single time, place, or area that this was said. It's just a single incomplete statement. He believed it was true, but also it's constitutionally correct, protected speech. And then this is the part where I want to just say something. This is where Ryan Reynolds admits that Baldoni has a thin skin. Okay. So it says, and the FAC's thin-skinned outrage over a movie character that the satirical woke Nicepool does not even pretend to be tied to any actual legal claims. Yes, it does. It's tied to intimidation, to the defamation side of things, and it's a tactic that they used to show the power that they had, which led to what Baldoni alleges was extortion. Remember, they dropped the hammer? But isn't it interesting that a man who is a Democrat, Ryan Reynolds claims that he's a Democrat, but I don't believe that he is, would say something like thin-skinned? Isn't that? And then he's using words like woke. It's just a really weird dynamic for me. It almost sounds to me like he's like trying to say like, I'm not like Justin, right? Like Justin's a woke liberal. You know what I mean? Like he's trying to separate himself from that. It just seems kind of weird because like Ryan and Blake try to be liberal. And I'm not here, by the way, to bring politics into it, but they just brought it in, right? So they said the woke Nicepool. It's just stupid. And instead it falls into the FAC's general allegations of hurt feelings. Okay, so I want to ask the chat, if you are Justin Baldoni, ooh, first new sub and great breakdown. Thank you guys. If you're new here, make sure you hit the thumbs up, make sure to share the video. Let's get going. But my question is, thin skin is not the archetype excuse of the classic bullying, describing the victim as weak, literally telling us he's a bully. Yes, exactly, Riri. And I think it's just interesting that someone who's claiming to be a Democrat and someone who's like, I don't know if you followed Ryan and Blake, but they've been actively working on, Democratic National Convention stuff and campaigning. And it just seems like out of place for Ryan to be mocking a woke feminist man, because that's kind of what his party embraces, right? Why would you be mocking and making it satirical that someone that his party actually embraces? Why would you mock that? You should be so happy that a man is willing to do that, because there's not enough men that are doing what Justin does. And again, he's playing both sides of the board. I'm not being political, you guys. I don't care what side of the tracks you are. If I'm ever going to be talking about politics when it comes to this, it's always going to be in regards to Blake and Ryan or Justin. It has nothing to do with me. I have zero problems if you're a conservative or a Democrat or an independent. Everyone is welcome here as long as everyone is kind to one another and accepts everyone's points of view. Okay. So welcome to the people that are the first times in the chat. The chat is open to people that are become subscribers. All you got to do is hit the subscribe button and then wait 5 minutes and then you can join the chat. Okay. So I just think it's ironic here that he would say something like, instead it falls into the general allegations of hurt feelings, which in reality is nothing more than a desperate effort to advance the same curated bully image that Wayfair parties created and disseminated in the retaliation campaign they launched against Miss Lively in August 2024. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. This is a bully narrative? Do you think that Ryan doesn't understand what this looks like, what the optics of this look like to the wider public, that you used a platform through Disney, by the way, Disney. Hey, Disney, I have something to tell you, Disney. Your star of Deadpool used your studio and your money to bully another person in the industry. Disney, I'm talking to you, Disney and Marvel. I mean, what do you guys think about that? Do you think that Disney wants to be part of something like that? So I just Ryan wants to disconnect himself from this, okay?
A few little runners in the, there's a.
But I want you to hear what he had to say about Nicepool, okay? I want you to hear what he told this guy about why he needed to kill Nicepool, who he, in his own admission, in his statement, he just said, this is Baldoni. He did not deny that Nicepool was Baldoni. He didn't, right? He did not deny. So now listen to him in an interview with someone, I think from Budapest, Turkey, talk about why he killed Nicepool.
Mobiles and John Candy. And there's the theme that I do end up killing myself at some point. But I loved killing Nicepool because Nicepool's, as much as he projected that he was wonderful, he was a terrible human being. And I like that Deadpool gets to lean into that anti-hero thing and gets to lean into his childlike desires. I want that. Be it Nicepool's guns, his gold-plated guns, or his dog that really should be with Wade because the dog and Wade look the same. I like sort of acting out envy in that way because it's a very normal human feeling and it's something that is actually easy to play. And Deadpool's a guy that can kind of get away with it because his coping mechanism against shame is actually the same. Wolverine and Deadpool are the same. They both live in and chew and blow bubbles with shame all day long. My maladaptive coping mechanism is deflection and humor. His is violence, but there's more similarities than not. And
okay, so did you hear that? They killed. Why did they kill? Did anyone pay attention? Why in the chat did Ryan kill Nicepool in the film? And by the way, the character Nicepool that was in the film wasn't actually a bad guy. He unalived Nicepool because he was jealous. He wanted the dog. So who is the dog? He wanted the dog and he wanted the gold-plated guns. So who's the dog and who are the gold-plated guns? He wanted the dog. So basically, barking Blake, correct. BL is the dog. What is the gun? The guns are what? The movie. He's jealous. The guns are the movie. So Ryan is saying that he is jealous of Nicepool, and Nicepool is Justin Baldoni. So it all comes down to rage, selfish, like insecurity, jealousy. Should I play this again?
Thing and like gets to lean into his like childlike desires. I want that.
I want that.
Like desires. I want that.
I want that. I want that. He gets to lean into his childlike desires. I want that.
Be it Nicepool's guns, his gold-plated guns, or his dog that like really should be with Wade because the dog and Wade look the same.
So he wants his gold-plated gun and the dog because the dog and Wade look the same. Now, theoretically, the dog could also be Colleen. The dog looks like Colleen and is depicted as ugly because Ryan is mean and wanted to show her in the baddest way. It could have been. I mean, Colleen could be the dog too, because he says the dog belongs with Wade. And then he brags that he uses deflection and shame. This is the smoking gun, allegedly. Well, you guys, again, we have how many? Hold on. We have 458 thumbs up, and I do not see that many. I see more than 1,000 of you watching. So I think we need more thumbs up, and let's keep going. You haven't missed most of it. We're actually just getting started. You know what can I just say this, gents and friends? What I'm really enjoying about this story is I have been able to meet a lot of really amazing creators. And actually, I spent about an hour on the phone with Eric, who is the producer guy for Ask Two Lawyers. And I'm going to be doing a collaboration with them soon, which was so fun to talk to Eric. We were like chatting about the story and the court cases, and it was good to get an understanding of like where they're at, what they think. But I was super stoked because I have been definitely consuming some of Stuart and Keith's content, and I really, really, really like them. I think they have this like super like low key, mellow presence, and they seem to be just like trying to stick to the facts. And I really appreciate that about them. So yeah, they have a good, so, but I also love that I subscribed. Oh, thank you. Okay. They seem like honest lawyers. Exactly. Eric's voice is dreamy. You know, Eric was super, super nice. You guys, did you know he's from Maine? Okay, so he's from Maine. Yeah, I'm sorry, hit the like button. Thumbs up, exactly. So he wants that.
I like sort of acting out envy in that way because it's a very normal human feeling and it's something that is actually easy to play. And Deadpool's a guy that can kind of get.
So he likes to play envy because it's easy to play, and Deadpool can do envy because he's deflecting and shame. Okay, so another thing I wanted to show you. Let's add this back up. Okay. So he says all of their other claims fail for a similar reason. So this is nothing more than a deferred. So he doesn't actually say that the satirical woke Nicepool does not even pretend to be tied to any actual legal claims. Instead, it falls into the FAC's general allegation of hurt feelings, which in reality is nothing more than a desperate effort to advance the same curated bully image that Wayfair parties have disseminated in retaliation campaign that they launched against like Miss Lively. So he's not denying, right, that Deadpool and Nicepool is him. All the other claims fail for the same reason. They say that Mr. Reynolds extorted them, but fail to allege that they received any money or property. Well, when they're trying to get a film from you, right? That's extortion. They claim he interfered with a contract without identifying what the contract is. That's not true. They identified that he had a contract with what? His agency, his talent agency. That's what he's suing him for. That's the claim. What provisions were allegedly breached and even which of them were parties to it? Bullcrap. This is Ryan throwing crap at a wall and pretending like we haven't paid attention to the filing. And he's just hoping that none of you have read the actual claim, because the claim is that Ryan spoke to who? The talent agent at the Deadpool and Wolverine, and was telling all of these people in the industry that Justin was a predator. And then he starts talking about the $400 million and he's calling it hyperbole, prose claims, blah, blah, blah. It's like, honestly, a lot of word salad. So the FAC does not plead a single complete statement published by Mr. Reynolds. They only hint about purported statements that they allege to form the basis of the defamation claim. No, they actually in the FAC said that he told the WME agent that he was a predator. I'm actually pretty shocked that they went into this, because it's like all the judge has to do is read the First Amendment complaint and he will actually see that this argument doesn't hold any bearing, because it's very clear what he said and who he said it to. He says that there's only 2 allegations that fit the descriptions of statements, and that was that Reynolds approached, and here he puts it in here, Reynolds approached Baldoni's agency, namely an executive at WME, and expressed his deep disdain for Baldoni, suggesting the agency was working with a sexual predator, a phrase that was coincidentally later appeared in the press and at a later date amended that the agent dropped Baldoni. And what happened when they filed the lawsuit? They dropped him. It says, apart from these 2 statements, oh, and then that Leslie Sloan went as far as to propagate that Baldoni is a sexual predator, and that he used this to describe Baldoni when he called Baldoni's own agent. So if you're out there and you're listening to this, are you seeing that he's literally admitting that there's actionable claims here of what Ryan did? He spoke to an agent, right? He spoke to Justin's agent and Leslie Sloan. I'm sorry, who is promoting a channel? Hey, Katie, it's me, Todd. Not sure if it matters anymore, but I changed my name of my channel and now I'm no longer a brunch. Oh, okay. Hang on a second. My husband just sent me a super chat. Okay, 1 second. Add as moderator. Okay. That's my husband, you guys. Okay. All right. So he admits that there's actually actionable claims here, which I think is very weird. I think we should let's keep the politics out of things, unless we're talking about this video. This is not a political channel, and so I don't want people arguing in the chat about racism and politically speaking where racism comes from. Let's just keep things happy and on here. Okay, so apart from those two statements, this is what he claims that Mr. Reynolds they've alleged against him. Demanded that the Wayfair parties publicly apologize for the so-called mistakes during production, was present during a meeting at the apartment that he shares with Miss Lively, at which he praised Miss Lively's version of a scene in Mr. Baldoni's presence, allegedly contributed some writing of his own to the script. Allegedly? Your wife said it on the red carpet. That's not alleged. You did that. So now you're saying you didn't do it. Isn't it interesting how he wants to separate himself now from Blake? When they were on the red carpet, he was totally fine with Blake giving him credit for that rooftop scene, but now he wants to say that he allegedly did this. Admonished Mr. Baldoni for asking about Miss Lively's weight and demanded that scene be removed from the film. What kind of husband can do that to a boss, you guys? Like, can you imagine your husband or wife like calling your boss over and making a demand? Your husband or wife, not your husband or your wife asking your boss, but you demanding that your boss do, your spouse's husband or your spouse's boss do something. And attended a meeting with Miss Lively to address her allegations of sexual harassment on set and demanded that Mr. Baldoni apologize for his conduct. So if you remember, that's the day that Baldoni says that Ryan screamed at him. But that meeting wasn't supposed to be that, right? It was supposed to be a return to work. Unfollowed Mr. Baldoni on social media and included the Nicepool character in Deadpool and Wolverine, which that the FAC alleges was meant to satirize Mr. Baldoni's persona as a woke feminist. So he's not denying this, though. Like, at no place did he deny that. This could have been an opportunity for him to say which is untrue, but he didn't say that. Oh. Someone just showed up into my chat to ask me a question about my lawsuit. And it said that they heard I screwed up and I had to resubmit some things to the court. And actually, that's not true. We got some audio clips of Robert Shin actually making some confessions that would help my case. So we actually submitted additional information to the court. We didn't screw anything up. We just sent information to them because Robert was on audio confessing to things that he claimed that I defamed him with. So his own words. Okay. Yes, you guys, I am being sued by a cult leader, and he was in the docuseries Netflix's Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok cult, which I worked on and helped as the archival consultant. And he's suing me and has been suing me for 3 years. And he has a group of people that defend him because they don't like me. Can you imagine defending a cult leader that's been accused of alleged human trafficking, sex trafficking, extortion, fraud, sexual battery, sexual assault, sexual harassment, workplace violence, gender violence? Can you imagine defending someone that is being sued by like 8 people for all these different things? Yeah, There's actually people that defend that. And if you haven't checked out the series, it's on Netflix. It's called Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok cult. You'll actually hear from some of the victims of this group, and you can hear it straight from their mouth describe what he put them through. He sounds credible. So here's the thing is, the claims against Mr. Reynolds fail under both the New York and California laws. Who wants to tell Mr. Reynolds that his wife brought California claims to a New York court? Miss Lively, while the Wayfair parties appear to agree with Miss Lively that California law applies to the allegations in the case she filed, that does not answer what law applies to the Wayfair claims against Mr. Reynolds. You know, when I saw that part, when I saw that statement, you guys, when I saw that statement, I had a light bulb moment. Did Blake Lively file this with California claims, knowing that they might push back and file a motion to dismiss? And she did this intentionally, right? Filed the wrong state in New York. Did she do it technically so that they would have a reason to dismiss the case so it wouldn't have to go forward? So they could argue for a motion to dismiss. And now that they're accepting it, now he's like, well, wait a minute. I guess they accept it from Miss Lively. Right? Well, it appears the Wayfair parties appear to agree with Miss Lively that California law applies to the allegations that she filed. That does not answer the law applies to Mr. Reynolds. Here's the thing. I'll tell you something. Blake will not be able to argue this, okay? Because Blake filed California claims against them. And so because Blake brought California as the forum that she believes is the proper state, where the laws apply for hers, she has to accept the California laws that they've brought against her. She doesn't get a way out because she's the one that introduced California into the case. I've never seen anything like this, you guys. I've never seen someone start a case and want it to be like this thing where it's like you bring in a different state into generally, okay, you guys, when you file a lawsuit, federal or state, you usually file based upon the state that you're in. You don't go to New York and file California. Now, the only reason you might do that in this case is that some of the conduct happened in California. Wayfair is in California. But what I think is odd, though, is why didn't Blake bring this case to California? She went through the process of getting a CRD, filing for the civil right to sue, but then she never filed in California. Instead, she went to New York, and she never got a right to sue in New York. She never went to the steps to get a federal right to sue, by the way. And instead of going to state court, she went to federal court, which also doesn't make sense. Part of me believes that the lawsuit was just like this thing that they filed because they were like, okay, we have to file it somewhere. Let's file it where we can get it tossed out. I mean, I don't know if that's true. That's just kind of like, yes, she lives in New York, but if she lives in New York, she should technically be using New York law. Feds are closed courts. California does allow cameras, so they probably wanted to stay away from the cameras in California for sure. and federal doesn't, but you could have gone to federal court in California too, because California law is, or federal court, no matter what state you're in, doesn't allow cameras. But California has a really strict anti-slap law. And maybe she was trying to avoid the civil extortion. I don't know. A lot of this case doesn't make sense, and I've covered a lot of them. He says, Mr. Reynolds was never an employee of Wayfair Studios, nor did Mr. Reynolds ever have any contractual relationship with Wayfair Studios, and therefore no contractual choice of law provisions apply. Wasn't it Mr. Reynolds that his company, Maximum Effort, was the marketing manager for this film? Mr. Reynolds must have had a contract of sorts with someone in order to be paid for marketing of It Ends With Us. The defamation claim fails as a matter of law. It's fatally deficient because the FAC does not identify a single alleged defamatory statement. We've already talked about that. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. He claims that he is being accused of calling him a predator, okay? And that they're not, he says the sole allegation as to the executive statement provides only slightly more detail, namely that Mr. Reynolds and an unnamed executive at WME had a conversation during a movie premiere about Mr. Reynolds' deep disdain for Baldoni, suggesting the agency was working with a predator. The FAC does not allege the precise term Mr. Reynolds used and sentence in which they allegedly suggested it. So what he's doing here is these are technical arguments. These aren't actual, like, he's fighting about semantics here. He's not saying he didn't say it. He's trying to get this out on a technicality. And I'll tell you one thing about federal judges is they will not throw shit out on stuff like this, because what he's arguing here isn't a question of law. Okay, he's actually fighting about a question of fact. And a question of fact is not allowed as a motion to dismiss before the case gets to litigation. There is no, there's absolutely, you can't argue about the statement of facts, because at this point in the case, the court has to accept that what is in the complaint is fact. So the only way that you can dismiss is if there's a law that you can get a technical dismissal out. You can't argue facts. You have to argue the technicality of the law. Okay. The FAC does not allege what precise term he used in this alleged suggestion, the sentence in which the alleged suggestion did, blah, blah, blah. Mr. Reynolds dislikes him for having sexually harassed his wife. Okay. What did he do to his wife? They're not defamatory because they're opinion. Okay, so he just, did you see this? He just spent like 5 minutes explaining that he didn't defame them and he probably didn't say it. Okay. And it was never said. But now he's going to say that it's an opinion. And I'll tell you one thing, that the court will not dismiss based on this, because they're not going to dismiss it and say that it's a constitutionally protected opinion. And the reason why they're adding constitutionally in there, because they're trying to make this statement a legal technicality, and it's not going to work because it's not a constitutionally protected opinion to run around and tell people that that's a direct competitor to you. Wayfair Studios is a competitor to Maximum Effort. You have to think of it in these terms. He's a direct competitor. And so he's running around to people in the industry and he's telling them that Justin Baldoni is a sexual predator and you shouldn't work with him. So it's not an opinion, but he's saying, but even if he said it, it was an opinion. The First Amendment principles ought to be obvious and even celebrated. A group of litigants who have spent most of the past few months calling Mr. Reynolds and his wife bullies and liars. Well, I mean, if the shoe fits, right? He also wants to call it hyperbole. Mr. Baldoni may not appreciate being called a predator. Those hurt feelings do not give rise to legal claims because name calling does not reflect a fact but a non-verifiable view. So really what's happening here throughout this claim is that Reynolds is literally admitting over and over and over again that he's a bully. So he's obviously contradicting himself a lot. Okay, so we've seen some of the contradictions here. Now he's back to during a phone conversation with Mr. Baldoni's agent and at a premiere. So here's the weird thing, because first he said he didn't know when these conversations happened, and now he's saying that he does know that it happened on a phone and at a premiere. And he's saying it's fatally flawed under the opinion doctrine, and that he has a First Amendment right to hold this opinion about him. Or he believed that he sexually harassed his wife in deep disdain. Do you notice that he says deep disdain a lot? Deep disdain. I never saw that in the first amended complaint. And the FAC does not allege any plausible facts that would remotely suggest, let alone establish, that anyone interpreted Mr. Reynolds' statements as reflecting anything other than his generally held belief that this was his character. Well, did you all hear the podcast with Ari Emanuel, that's the head of WME? Did you hear what he had to say? He said he was going to ride or die with Blake and Ryan because he's been with them forever, and they're huge moneymakers for WME because WME is his talent agent and they get a huge cut when he makes money, right? So he's wanting us to say that that's an opinion that he said to a talent agent. And Ari said that Justin was a really bad guy. If everything that what they're saying is true, Justin's a really bad guy. Ari wasn't on set. So that tells me that Ari's opinions about Justin have been formed by who? Ryan Reynolds. Even if they were verifiable as fact, they are not actionable as defamation because they are substantially true. Okay, you guys, first it's an opinion. This has changed so much. First of all, he never said it. Now it's an opinion, and now it's a fact. Because under the law, a statement is true if the statement would not have a different effect on the mind of the reader that had produced it. And then he goes into these different Boys Will Be Human and Man Enough, the podcast. He says that he pulls out those statements about what he said. It says those materials with which anyone who knows about Ms. Baldoni would be familiar. And they use a source that's not sourced in the first amended complaint. And if you haven't watched Ask Two Lawyers and their sort of breakdown of this document, I would suggest that you watch, because they explain that you have to stay within the bounds of the first amended complaint and you cannot introduce sources that are not within that FAC. So this addition of Justin's statements that are not introduced in any of the complaints, and Justin didn't introduce into his, they can't use this. So he's technically violating like a rule of the court by doing this. And so a judge is unlikely to take this into consideration because it's not included whatsoever in his first amended complaint. They're trying to couch it around the concept that Justin brought up, that he has a podcast, but that's not really how it works. He can't go to a video then and say that this is, because he's not Blake Lively, by the way. Ryan hasn't filed anything against Mr. Baldoni. Lawyers must have said F it and gave him full access to writing these. Yeah, it's pretty bad. I agree. It is a dumpster fire at this point. It is. Okay, so he says, I'm sure I have crossed boundaries and lines in my teens and 20s. Now, this is the statement that Ryan is telling the court is what proves that Justin Baldoni is a predator. I'm sure I've crossed boundaries and lines in my teens and my 20s, not even thinking about it, simply because of the porn I was consuming. He's also very mad about Miss Lively's character orgasm during a scene, admitting to telling Miss Lively that the onesie she was wearing underneath her jacket was sexy, admitting to casting his friends as the obstetrician in the birth scene, where he would have close proximity to her nude, admitted to asking Mr. Heath to show Miss Lively his wife's post-home birth video, no denial of biting and sucking of lip when the script only states a kissing scene. This is a weird addition. This is a really weird addition, because what does this do? What does this add for him? It makes him look like a jealous husband, you guys. If you're a director of a film and you're wanting a character to look a certain way and have a certain look, you're allowed to say things like the character's outfit should look sexy. Because if you're trying to sell an image, which most movies are, it just seems really odd to me that Ryan is bringing up things like he's really clearly upset that he called his wife sexy. He's upset that he sucked and bit a lip, which I doubt that happened. He's upset about hiring someone to be close to his wife's hand, like area when she was wearing briefs. Did anyone see the movie Deadpool and see what Ryan did in that film? Did you see the love scene in there? That was like full on BDSM. But hold on. Mr. Reynolds has a really...
Sitting there and I take her top off, I take her bra off, and she has the those pasties on.
Right.
But she's drawing these adorable little smiley faces on me. And I forget every line in the scene. Not just from this movie, from every other movie I've done. And I don't really know what I'm sort of going up. I'm nervous. I'm blithering on about.
So Ryan, of his own admission here, is admitting that when he was in a filming scene with Olivia Wilde in the film Change It Up, that he broke character. Okay? He broke character while he was in a love scene filming with Olivia Wilde and her top was off. And for some reason, he's telling this in a public forum where Olivia Wilde is not there to confirm or deny if this happened. The story is being told about her without his consent, without her consent. He's admitting outside of Olivia that when the scene occurred, he had broken character. Okay.
About nothing. And at some point in the scene, she takes my hands and puts them on her breasts. So they're there, palms are a little sweaty, don't know what's happening. And then at the end of the scene, I'm supposed to take them, and I'm trying not to look at her like a 14-year-old boy who just won the lady lottery.
Right.
And
Won the lady lottery. Is that what it's called? The lady lottery.
And I'm trying not to do it. And I take, at some point in the scene, I have to take my hands away. And I take my hands away, and I look down at my hands, and there's 2 freaking smiley faces on them.
So he's in a scene where he is supposed to be playing a character, admitting that he has broken character. He's extremely turned on because what he's saying, I have to pretend like I'm not a 14-year-old boy that hasn't won the lady lottery. So he's literally admitting to Jay Leno that he was turned on. Turned on. I want to see, what year was this filmed? The Change Up, I think it was called. I think this was released in 2011. So he was married to Scarlett Johansson. Did he even think about how Olivia would feel? Exactly. I'm a producer. It's an actual job. Perhaps BL and RR should have to read a book. It's an intense story. Do they not know what acting is? I know.
And I have no idea what to do. So, you know, the scene is over now. There's 65 crew members around. I mean, there's all these guys. There's like the one, the jackpot. I'm sitting there, and I reflexively, like an idiot, just put my hands right back on her breasts. And I think I'm doing it to cover them up, but I'm like realizing right now it's a very fine line between chivalry and, you know, workplace sexual assault.
So he was on a set with Olivia Wilde, and after the scene broke and they said cut, he looked around and saw other men looking at her body, and he decided that he needed to put his hands back on her breasts, but they were not filming anymore. I doubt that's actually what happened. I doubt that's why he put his hands there. But, you know, when you think of what he's trying to accuse Justin of doing, right? He's trying to say that he bit and suck a lip, right? He called a woman sexy. Ryan, you just literally admitted that you groped Olivia Wilde on a set and that you broke character and were aroused during a love scene where you were supposed to be acting. It's wild, you guys. He also brings up Baldoni's porn addiction, which again has absolutely nothing to do with this. None of this is in his First Amendment complaint. Literally all of this is just crap he probably wants the public to consume so that he can further smear him. That's my opinion. He links all these different podcasts as evidence. So he's taking conversations out of place. I was introduced to it when I was 10 years old. He admits that you're right, as a Black man or you as a woman, you have had to put up with a lot of shit from people that looks like me or from me your entire life. And again, it could be a laundry or it could be a microaggression for racism or sexism, whatever it is, I've done all of them. Or that he wanted, as a man, to claim her publicly. On some level, I knew it would make me feel more like a man about wanting to claim his wife publicly. While it is unclear to what the predator means to an average listener, it is quite clear that it is no discernible distinction between the gist of Mr. Reynolds' purported statements and the behavior of which Mr. Baldoni has repeatedly confessed to in public appearances, including he spent years of his life mistreating women, which he attributes to his lengthy addiction to pornography, as well as openly describing his distorted conception of consent in relationships. So this is the evidence that Ryan Reynolds is using to make people believe that he's a predator. And he says that the average, it might be unclear to the average listener. Well, what does that mean? It means that Ryan's brain made up something that didn't exist. Because I want to ask you in the chat, this is what he referenced. Let's add this again, okay?
You are what you consume. Sure.
This is, you guys, this is the statement that he says proves that Baldoni, the average listener, you guys.
It starts to become very confusing, which is definitely something that happened to me. I'm sure I have crossed boundaries and lines in my teens and 20s, not even thinking about it, simply because of the porn I was consuming. You are what you consume. It's that simple. And so many men, so many of us men, I would argue that in the high 90s are consuming it on a daily or weekly basis. And that is absolutely influencing the way that they see the world, the way that they see their relationship, and the way that they view women as objects and not people.
Parents need to have a...
So in any part of that conversation, did Justin 1A admit that he did anything to a woman that was of a sexual nature? Did he admit that he SA'd anyone or SH'd anyone? No, he was speaking about the impact of specific content and how it impacts someone's mind to understand what consent is, and that no one taught him what consent meant. So if you are the jury, right? So they're introducing all of this evidence. You're the jury and you get to watch this video, and you're supposed to run away with the idea that this is the statement that he's going to fall on his sword and say, this is why I know that he's a predator. This is the reason why people don't believe them, you guys. And then I just want to show you this clip I found of Ryan to kind of show to you just a little bit how unhinged he is. This was a
little concerned.
This was an interview that he did with Andrew Garfield, who played Spider-Man. And it's an actor on actor. This was a couple weeks before Blake filed her lawsuit
About the prostate, but it turns so I have a bit of that, but I don't have. That is just a poorly constructed self-defense, maladaptive coping mechanism. It doesn't, I have a. It's like in movies when like there two people are struggling for control of the gun, and then suddenly the gun goes off and the lights go out, and for one terrible moment we kind of don't know who's been hit. Mm-hmm. It's like that's sort of like sometimes feels like my base emotion.
His base emotion, he says, is wrestling with another person with a gun, and they don't know who shot who. Like he's a split personality. That's his base emotion. Like you're in a...
My base emotion, who's been hit. Mm-hmm. It's like that's sort of like, and then suddenly the gun goes off and the lights go out, and for one terrible moment we kind of don't know who's been hit. Mm-hmm. It's like that's sort of like sometimes feels like my base emotion. So I have all these other things that kind of
his base emotion. You guys, I don't even understand. What does that mean? I know. What does that even mean? Your base emotion is like, so you think you have like two personalities and they're fighting over a gun and you don't know who got shot, or are you scared? Like what is the base emotion? Okay. I also want to show you something else, because this is the video of her biting Justin's lip. She bit his lip. He's constantly in a state of fight or flight. He feels like he's losing control. Yeah. So I feel like Ryan is, yeah, it's just a mess, you guys. Depravity. Okay, it's depravity. Paranoid anxiety. So if his base emotion is paranoid anxiety, and Ryan has admitted that when he spirals out of control, he has the capacity to overblow regular, he has the ability to blow things out of proportion and make things appear like there's danger or imminent danger coming when there's not. He has admitted that when he spirals out of control, it's like he's someone he doesn't know. He can create situations and danger that doesn't exist. So would it be wild to think that, Mr. Reynolds decided that these things mean that Mr. Baldoni's a predator? ADHD doesn't do this to you, honey. I have ADHD and I don't go around accusing people of being sexual predators that are not sexual predators. Okay. It would be perverse to permit. So here's what he's saying. It would be perverse to permit Mr. Baldoni to build an entire brand complete with a podcast, TED Talk, and book off of his confessions of repeatedly mistreating women, only to turn around and sue Mr. Reynolds for $400 million for simply pointing out in private what Mr. Baldoni has bragged about in public. But he said it would be perverse to permit. To me, this is like him saying that he wants to destroy Baldoni's brand, right? Perverse to permit. He seems almost jealous that he has a TED Talk, a book, and a podcast. It's weird, right? And he wants to put this out publicly. Why is it Ryan's business to tell anyone this, by the way? Oh, then he goes into about special damages, and he's trying to say that there's no actual malice, nor do claims of, like Mr. Reynolds' deep disdain for the rage and wrath directed at Mr. Baldoni. You guys, this is literally the most unhinged document I've ever seen in my entire life. Oh, someone's from Ryan's greetings from Vancouver Island. If you're his attorneys, would you really want your client to be like Mr. Reynolds' deep disdain for and rage and wrath directed at Mr. Baldoni? Rage and wrath. So rage and wrath are irrational feelings, you guys. It's not rational to feel rage and want to destroy people. That's not something you would generally admit to in a court document. He's admitting that he has rage and wrath directed at Baldoni. So all because Baldoni did a podcast where he talked about consent, and all because Baldoni, what did he say? What was that footnote again? Let's go back to that footnote. These are the things that he seems to be really bad. Oh, Blake Lively orgasming in a sex scene. It's a freaking movie. Admitting to telling Miss Lively that the onesie she was wearing under her jacket was sexy. So what I'm seeing here, honestly, is that he is not separating Lily Bloom, the character, from his wife. He's not seeing Blake, the human, and Miss Lily Bloom, because he's not telling Blake that Blake should be orgasming. He's not actually saying that Blake should orgasm, right? They're faking it for a scene for a character. But Ryan appears to be, the lines are blurred and he doesn't see Blake outside of the character. And again, telling Miss Lively that her character, this was all while they were filming, telling the character, not Miss Lively, casting a friend to be the obstetrician. Okay, they're trying to make this birth scene appear really sexualized when it wasn't. Asking her to see a post-home birth video. You know what bothers me about all of this? And no denial of biting and sucking a lip. You know what bothers me the most about this is this birth video. Ryan and Blake are trying to spend a lot of time making it seem like a home birth where you can't, there's like a towel over her chest, the baby's on top, she is not, you don't see anything. You don't see anything. There's a towel, a baby, and they're acting like that is somehow something that it's not. It's the same way that Blake's side is getting outraged that that Justin did the voice note and he said, "I'm sure you have a baby on the boob." Come on, you guys. Who is a breastfeeding mother? Who is a breastfeeding mother? I was. And baby on the boob is literally a phrase that you say when you're a breastfeeding mom. It's not inappropriate to use that term. But they're trying to they find these little weird ways to try to sexualize things and that are not sexual. But Ryan can again admit to doing stuff too. This document proves to me that Ryan really screamed at Baldoni in front of that Sony rep to the point that Sony rep felt that she should have intervened. Exactly. Exactly. Because that's all they have. Exactly. Exactly. Because that's all they have. Right. Exactly. That's all they have. Okay. Yes, and there's nothing sexual about a home birth. Thank you. He's gaslighting. He's in full on narcissistic collapse. That's right too. Blake was cool with running lines and things with coworkers in the room. If she doesn't mind, why should they? Yet Ryan spoke about the perineum. Yeah, he told Justin that if he could switch the schedule, he would get the main production line person that does the scheduling. He would get their face tattooed on his perineum, which is your taint in between your butt and your. Ryan brought that up. Okay, so this is only, you guys, now what they fought about in the trailer is really important. This is a rumor, and we don't talk about rumors here. This was never verified in any article. There was no things in the Daily Mail. There was no people. There's no Reddit about this. This is some sort of allegation that came from a video by Candace Owens. I just want to know, I just want people to understand, I don't run with the rumor mill over on this channel. We try to stick to what's in the complaint. And there's this other thing happening right now with regards to Ryan's sexuality that I just think is, I mean, even if he was, none of that's our business and none of it's relevant and it doesn't matter. So it's just like something to talk about that we don't need to discuss. Yeah. It's hearsay, but we do know that Ryan screamed at Baldoni per the amended complaint, the first amended complaint, right? So we can say that there were some screaming altercations. There were two that he talked about. So there you go. We just stick to the facts here. We don't get into the speculation. All right. He's really, he doesn't want to say how he caused injury by the predator statement. Well, you know, he owns a studio and they had projects that they lost. He lost his agent, his agency, his studio lost an agent. They don't have anyone representing them now. A bunch of projects have been dropped. He lost his podcast. He's trying to say that no actual malice happened here. He thinks that there's no relevant reason why 400 million should apply. Here's the thing. There again, this is like a red herring, okay? So like what he's doing is he's trying to focus on the 400 million, and the 400 million is kind of this, he doesn't have to prove anything for damages right now, okay? He doesn't have to give evidence for why this number is, because it's like literally just a number that's put on the complaint, okay? Justin doesn't have to argue why it's this number in his complaint. They will argue as they get into discovery and they go to trial why this number is relevant. And as they go through the case, they will be able to, at that point, discuss why this $400 million is relevant. But for a motion to dismiss, it's really just a way for Ryan to have this like temper tantrum about the fact that they're suing him for 400 million. And they're not going to dismiss a case because he picked an arbitrary number, okay? They're not going to dismiss it because he's asking for special damages. I think if you were to look at the totality of what's happened to Baldoni's career, that number is probably on par with what the studio would have taken in. Think of how much money It Ends With Us made. 350 million at the worldwide box office. If you have multiple films that are in production and those both get quashed because of what Ryan did, all you need is a couple of those and it exceeds 400 million. At this point, he's also had his reputation damaged so much that the sequel that he owns, It Starts With Us. I mean, he owns the rights to this and he could have easily make another 400 million on It Starts With Us. And that's just thrown up in the air, right? So truthfully, is it really that arbitrary when you're talking about Wayfair Studios? Yeah, he lost money on this film, the sequel, and other projects. Think about it this way. If there had not been the drama surrounding the press tour, what Blake was doing, this film probably could have made a lot more money. The film did well despite what Blake did, but I'm sure in the grand scheme of things, there was a lot of people that were turned off so much that they didn't see the film because of the way that it was marketed. So the marketing plan, it capped what they could have done. And her version of the film is what was released, which was not indicative to the vision of what Wayfair wanted. And it wasn't the cut that they wanted. It didn't have the music that they wanted. So honestly, what she did could have indirectly damaged how much this film could have made. I mean, if you are someone that was a Colleen Hoover fan, and I wasn't a Colleen Hoover fan, I didn't watch the movie until I started covering this case, but I want to ask you, was there anyone in the audience that was wanting to see this film that made the decision not to see the film because of the way that Blake decided to market the film? Like, if you were someone that was out there and you saw Blake acting ridiculous, were you like, oh, I'm not going to go see that movie now because this is just weird? Why is Blake telling me to go buy my Florals and my Friends? Sublime, coconut. So some of you, Ellen, hi, Ellen. Some of you wanted nothing to do with this. Isn't that interesting? Me, no, JB was not green. You know what? We're not going to go off of rumors from Reddit. He had already done 2 films. He was not a green director. This was a very well produced. They had how many employees that were involved. They had an award-winning composer as involved in this. They had directors and they had producers that had done many other films. So my cousin read 2 of her books and they said they were terrible. Yeah, they are. This document is summed up as IRR did call him JB a sexual predator, but I also may have not. But if I did say it, it's because it's true. Judge. So this doc has no validity and made for PR only. Got it. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Okay. It is inconsistent with the FAC to find that Mr. Reynolds uttered the predator statements with actual malice. Indeed, there is not a single plausible factual allegation from which the jury could conclude that it was with actual malice. Y'all, I like how he's acting like he knows what the jury's gonna think. You know, this is the same man that thought it would be cool to put Deadpool and Nicepool into a film and that whole thing. But he's thinking that a logical jury is going to see this video and the TED Talk and assume that this is why he's a predator. You know, see, if I was on the jury, I would see that and I would be like, oh yeah, this guy had actual malice. Because if you add into the fact that the incentive of him doing this means that he can tarnish the reputation of a man that holds the sequel to a film that his wife could be in, that his wife could produce, and that his production company could put out. Because remember, Ryan owns Maximum Effort Production Company. Ryan and Blake owns her own production company. So you remember, there could be actual malice. Yeah. He had been acting for decades, and with that his second and third movie, he wasn't inexperienced. He was considerate of his coworkers and wanted their thoughts. Yes. Okay. So there could actually be malice here because a movie's on the line. And he's trying to get around these things by saying, well, you didn't actually have a contract with me. Like, oh, so you just did it without a contract. Cool. You just admitted you did it though, Ryan. It fails because it appears to rely entirely on alleged public disclosure of information, which the blah blahs. Even if it were not dispositive, the false light claim fails as a matter of law for the same reason as the defamation claim cannot survive dismissal. It's not constitutionally protected that you can say things about people that you know are not true. And it's very clear to me that we know that it's not true because he has to dig into archives of Mr. Baldoni's records to find a couple statements he made and pull them out of context to try to double down on his position that he believes Baldoni is a predator. And at the end of the day, what he's using, to me, if I were in the jury pool, doesn't show to me that he's a predator. It shows to me that he's being very conscious of what, how he's hurt people, how he can act differently, the mistakes he may have made as a child. He's also trying to say that he didn't interfere with the contract, but he did. If he got Wayfair to fire Baldoni based on the false claim that Justin Baldoni was a predator, that's actually interference in a contract. Florals and friends, eye roll, eye roll, eye roll. Yes. Okay. Furthermore, because a claim of tortious interference requires a showing of breach of contracts, there is a terminable. He's trying to act like that Justin didn't have a contract with WME. We know that they had a contract. They dropped him. The sole contract alleged in the complaint is the contract between the Wayfair parties and WME. But the FAC does not allege any details about the contract, including which parties it was bound to. So again, a technicality here. On the one hand, he's saying, you didn't specify what the contract was. And then on the other hand, he's like, well, I know what the contract was. It was this, and this is why, and here it is. But you didn't give me the details of the contract. But here's the thing. The complaint that they put out for the lawsuit, you do not have to show all of your evidence. He doesn't have to attach a copy of his contract as evidence with WME because it technically could violate confidentiality rules. And so it will very much be a part of discovery. Absolutely, the contract will be a part of the discovery, but he's trying to get out on a technicality and say that he doesn't know what the contract is, but he knows what the contract is. Okay. He doesn't know what the contractual provisions were. All of this is just blah, blah, fluff, 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 crap, crap, crap. He approached an executive at WME and suggested the agency was working with a predator, and at a later date demanded the agent drop him. Did those things happen? Ari Emanuel's on a podcast saying, well, what they told me was he was a bad guy. That Mr. Reynolds' alleged demand was anything other than an expression of a sincerely held belief, which is neither criminal nor tortious under the First Amendment. So he's saying, this is where it gets wild. So he's like, even if I did it, you guys, I didn't actually do anything wrong because it was my First Amendment right to tell the agents to drop Baldoni because I think he's a predator. If he did do it, he's a right to do it. This man is crazy. I think he has a very serious case of narcissistic personality disorder with a side of sociopath, maybe a psychopath. I'm not sure. We can just blame this on the fact that he's a Canadian. I don't know. Wayfair parties. He's really stuck on these damages. The damages part just doesn't, it's stupid. Like this is all just nonsense. They're not going to dismiss a case based on damages. They don't have to, in a complaint, tell them why then this number is why they're going to sue and how much they're going to ask for. They don't have to put that in any complaint. I would actually, if none of you have read a complaint before, if you've not been privy to civil litigation, I would challenge you to read other complaints from a public case like this, and you'll see that a lot of the arguments that he is making are not valid, and in the world of civil litigation are not going to get this case dismissed. In New York and California, all a lawsuit is a statement of notice that we're going to sue you. The complaint is simply the first part of the action, and it's discovery that is what builds the case and brings it forward. These are what they're claiming has been done to them. They do not have to bring any evidence to the table when they put the complaint together. All they have to do is describe in detail what happened to them and why they believe they have been victimized and are eligible for compensation. Okay. It says that the FAC allegations that Mr. Reynolds participated in a conspiracy to engage in torturous conduct against any of the Wayfair plaintiffs was utterly conclusionary, asserting that Miss Lively was working with her husband, conspired to harm the Wayfair parties by advancing a narrative to the press, is unsupported speculation. He doesn't get to decide that right now because they don't know what's in discovery, and that's not a law. Alleging that Mr. Reynolds apparently joined a campaign to extract concessions and creative control over a film by January 4th, 2024, and pure boilerplate reciting elements of a civil conspiracy liability. This actually is the claim. That's their claim. He just doesn't like that this is the claim that was made, but you cannot get it thrown out because you don't like what the claim is. He wants to get it thrown out before it's litigated. Very weird. And it says, appearing to recognize this deficiency, they confine each of their allegations to on information and belief. Maybe, maybe not. They're using the information and belief right now. My belief they're using that is because they don't want to say it's a way of getting around the fact that it's a fact. So it's what they currently believe. And it could change when they do discovery. Okay. He wants attorney's fees, which is ridiculous. And then he's talking about something about the New York Times. And then it says that he wants them to strike Exhibit A. So he just spent 28 pages detailing why this complaint doesn't have enough evidence and doesn't prove anything, but then he wants the Exhibit A to be struck from the record because it has too much information. And that it would, other than instruments to the complaint, would do considerable damage to the notice requirement. Requiring a defendant to hunt around in voluminous materials to figure out what the plaintiff alleges and relevant and support its claims, that is extraneous. So now he's saying that this document, Exhibit A, that's the timeline of events, well, that's just so much information and so hard for me to figure out what your claims are that you need to strike this. So on the one hand, he's all, your complaint doesn't have enough information. And on the other hand, he's like, your exhibit has too much information and it's too hard for me to read. Oh, Ryan Reynolds is a walking contradiction. Okay. That's the motion to dismiss. So, yeah, and even if it's stricken from the record, what the Exhibit A is its evidence. And it's basically just showing the court what evidence that they have. Full sprint contradiction. Correct. Okay. I also have the Leslie Sloan response by Brian Friedman today. One second. But I want to just double check to see if there's not anything else that's been filed today. So my baseline after reading this was that, one, Ryan Reynolds is unhinged. He is absolutely insane. He's doubling and tripling down on claims that are vastly overstated. He doesn't have a case whatsoever to make claim that Justin is a predator other than the mind of a jealous husband that doesn't want a director that's extremely good looking and has amazing abs to touch his wife. He's jealous of Baldoni, and I believe that he views Baldoni as a threat. Motion to seal. Oh, Jed Wallace just filed a motion to dismiss. We represent the defendant, Jed Wallace, in street relations, personal medical information, blah, 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 significant private interest. What is sealed will be limited, tailored only to personal medical information in the memorandum we redact on paragraph 1, less than 1% of the memorandum. 46 words out of what 6,600 words in the body. Okay. We have been on for an hour and 42 minutes. Are any of you interested in taking a look at Mr. Wallace's motion to dismiss? I want to get a pulse check from my audience to see where you all are at. I haven't even had a chance to review it, so it will be literally. Oh, it's not very much. So basically, Jed Wallace just cited, it's not much here. It basically, I'll just read to you what it says. It's only one page. It says, please take notice that through the memorandum of law declaration of Jed Wallace dated March 18th, 2025, they are going to move to dismiss the case that's been filed against them and for an order dismissing the claims of Blake Lively brought against them for the first time in her amended complaint for lack of personal jurisdiction under Rule 12B. He's a Texas citizen. That's actually a good one. Improper venue under 12B. That's a good one. Failure to state a claim. And an alternative, defendants move to sever the claims against them to transfer venue in the United States court for the Western District of Texas, where he actually filed a case against her. So he's going to file a motion to dismiss against her for improper venue, which he doesn't live in New York, and she can't bring a claim against him in New York if he's a Texas resident. You actually are supposed to sue people where they live. And if he doesn't live there and he has no ties to there, they can't sue him there. So that's actually that would be a good motion to dismiss for Jed. That's how I got out of one of my cases. Okay. There's not actually a full motion to dismiss, it looks like. Let me just double check. Nope. Notice of motions to dismiss, but no yet motion to dismiss. So let's do this one then. Go Jed. Yes. Feel bad for that guy. There's a cup of fancy coffee for you. Oh, here's a cup of fancy coffee. You deserve several for going through it all with us. Thank you. Friend of Crows. Thank you, Friend of Crows, for the super chat. I don't know if I've missed other people. Thank you. That's my husband. I got that one. You love my content. Thank you. And new member, new member, new member. Cool. Thank you, guys. Okay, so this is interesting for Miss Leslie Sloan. So I don't know if any of you guys have been paying attention to my channel. Do you guys, if you're watching my content, if you've been paying attention to some of the predictions I've been making, but some of you might know that I predicted that once they got the protective order, they would start trying to find different ways to not give discovery. So they were going to go through the process and being like, you're going to get the AEO. We're going to make it really painful and we're going to fight with you. And we're going to try to give like everything to the attorneys. We don't want anyone to see anything. And then once they get the AEO, they're going to try to delay discovery and they're going to try not to give any discovery because in my opinion, they never meant to actually file this lawsuit. They had no intention of moving forward with it. And they're just doing this to further abuse Justin Baldoni and are using the court system to continue to smear him and intimidate him. That's my opinion. The problem for them is that they picked a fight with a billionaire, which is really stupid. Like there's a million people you could pick a fight with. And the last person on the list that I would pick a fight with would be a billionaire, especially one that's committed to spending $100 million to defend himself against you. But that's just my 2 cents. Okay. So they don't want Leslie to get a stay of discovery. I don't really know how this is going to go, but they say that the parties have not demonstrated that discovery sought from it was burdensome, although the Sloan parties complain about the number of categories of documents sought and the number of interrogatories propounded. The Sloan parties can assert such an objection in formal response to the parties will meet and confer about the demands and compliance with your honor's individual practices. So they're trying to get a delay on discovery because of the number of volumes that they're asking for, but they're saying that like they're asking for a delay doesn't change any of this. And this is actually something that's can be done differently by doing a meeting between attorneys. And if her role in this dispute is small, then it shouldn't really be a burden for her to produce documents. And they're trying to go off of the motion to stay for the New York Times, but they're trying to say like Leslie's not a journalist, and the court has stated that the reason why they're giving the New York Times a delay is because there's a probability that it could be dismissed under the New York Shield law, which is for the press. And so while the court decides on the New York Times motion to dismiss, he did stay discovery, but they're saying the Sloan parties can't use what the New York Times are using because she's not a journalist, which she's not. And she just doesn't want to give it up because of business competitors and parties in the action. But they also have said, but we already have, you were just in court last week and we have an AEO now and you can do it under AEO. So it's like they all fought 2 weeks ago with the judge, like we want AEO. And now they're like, we don't want to give stuff because it would be really hard. It would really be burdened to give stuff. Plus all this competitor stuff. You have a designation that you were in court fighting for, Leslie Sloan. They say unless her claims are dismissed, which they don't believe is going to happen, even if she's just a material witness, she still would be having to produce discovery, which is true. They say that they will be unfairly prejudiced by a stay of discovery in the event that they lack prejudice to the This again is about the New York Times, and she's not the New York Times. It says the Sloan parties have not made a strong showing that the Wayfair parties have filed claims against them that are unmerited. They attempt to paint a false picture that the parties have not meaningfully opposed the motion to dismiss. In truth, Wayfair parties' opposition to the Sloan parties' motion to dismiss is robust, persuasive, and warrants the denial of the motion to dismiss. And then contrary to their criticism of the impermissible group pleading, the First Amendment complaint adequately notifies the Sloan parties that the allegations against them are that they engaged in a conspiracy with Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds to spread false and defamatory information about the Wayfair parties to various media outlets, including the Daily Mail and the New York Times, and principally pertained to accusations that Justin Baldoni and Jamie Heath engaged in sexual misconduct towards Blake Lively, and that Wayfair parties orchestrated a retaliatory smear campaign to damage Lively's image and reputation after she reported their purported misconduct. As set forth more fully, they say that the opposition to the dismissal motion, the First Amendment complaint adequately states the claims for defamation, civil extortion, false light under the applicable California laws, and specifically alleged the Sloan parties made statements to reporters that he was a sexual predator. So they also try to argue that she claims that if some of the claims against her are dismissed, it would reduce the amount of discovery required from her, and they say that's not true. Michelle, girl, you need to hydrate some more. You're talking for a long time. Grab some more liquids with this. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Moondy Shrooms and Bren W. for joining. All right. So what I've learned today is that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have a very, 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 very unhealthy marriage. The two of them are embroiled in a very toxic marriage. Ryan has exposed himself as an incredibly jealous, rage man that has great disdain for Justin Baldoni. Thank you so much for the super chats. I do appreciate them. All those chats help the channel. Appreciate that. Great disdain, anger, and rage towards Justin Baldoni, and he has a vendetta that he wants to destroy Justin Baldoni. So I don't know about you, but like, the last thing I would be admitting to in a motion to dismiss where you're trying to prove that there wasn't malice is prove that you actually had malice and wanted to destroy Justin Baldoni's life. Did anyone get that about that motion to dismiss? Like, he's all like, I have great disdain for him, and I'm going to use my rage and my vendetta against him to destroy his career. Like, okay, I just want to put this out there. If anyone isn't listening to me out in the audience, it is not normal to want to destroy someone that you don't like. It's not. There is absolutely nothing normal about anyone interfering in someone else's business or their life. There's nothing normal about wanting to destroy another director's life because he has a film that you want to produce. There's nothing normal about being so angry at someone that you run around Hollywood and try to get everyone to hate you, which now it's sort of like when he's admitting to doing these things in this complaint, it kind of makes me feel like Justin and Brian Friedman, when he says that the documents don't lie, it makes me truly believe when he says that there is actual evidence of Blake Lively poisoning cast members against Justin and Wayfair. Because if Ryan's running around in circles and going all over the place and all over the the Hollywood trying to smear him, why wouldn't they go in on the cast and turn the cast against him too? I mean, that would be the first place you would start, right? So you're going to turn everyone on the cast against him when you're isolated with them and you've removed him from the situation so he can't defend himself. Dragonfly says, that's what toxic people do. Destroy. I come from an adjacent industry which operates with PR machines and public-facing communications. It's toxic behind the scenes. Very. I'm learning this. Very toxic. I look like a ballerina. Well, thank you. Also, I just want to
for my daughters, and I really failed, and they were so ugly. And then of course I let my daughters participate, as you can tell. Ryan wasn't even in town, and then I just posted this and made it seem like he made terrible, ugly cookies. That's what he gets for leaving town. Okay. It's great in interviews because nobody. And I really pride.
This is where.
City
Okay, so here I'd like to tell you something. One of the things that they can do to poke holes in her credibility is to actually look at her own public statements. And here's Blake admitting she lies to journalists.
Here's the real secret behind this tweet. This is full spoiler alert. I made these cookies and they were so bad, and I really pride myself. See, I talk about what a good baker I am and what a good cook I am, but it's great in interviews because nobody's actually trying your food, so they can't really fact check it. So everybody's like, oh, Blake, you're such a great chef. Tell me about that. And they have no idea what I can just be told. They don't know. So I mean.
So Blake admits that she will lie to journalists about her cooking skills because they won't fact check her.
This is the Betty White case. You flick.
Now, this is Blake on the promotion for Rhythm Section. Listen to her talk about men. Listen to the way that Blake openly discusses men.
And somebody's doubled over.
It is an external system.
Women go through.
Yes.
Right? Balls. Because this is the Betty White case. You flick them and somebody's doubled over.
It is an external system.
Women go through.
Yes.
Right?
All right.
I lost my family 3 years ago.
Pretty bad hand injury.
Sure did. But we had to injure your hand. Like I could have closed it in an elevator and then I wouldn't have had any. A 3.5 minute fight. Capture the right things we have.
What would all of you, what's the big aspect you would want to tackle in a potential sequel?
Well, I think in this movie, in the Rhythm Section, Jude Law says to her, I think that's a book, what she's.
When she's an assassin, but nobody ever found the body. But this, was in a one-take fight. Cool way to injure your hand. Like the stitches were from my injury.
So, sorry. She says that Mike dropped Disney. She admits that she's talking about flicking a man's balls. Flicking a man's balls, you guys. I have more of these, hold on. I have another one I want to show you. This is her admitting to turning people against Oliver Stone. Literal ball buster, yes. Such a weird word to say, too. I've never heard anyone use that word before. Or while filming.
Because at Betty Buzz, we don't test on animals. We test on men.
That's a good boy. Drink up.
Let him know how good it is.
So this was made while she was filming It Ends With Us, by the way. She objectified a man to promote her booze. You know, they test on men, she says, right? We're supposed to believe that the woman that treats men like this is somehow not in charge of her own self, and Justin had full control over her. Hold on, I gotta clean some of these out. Blake and Ryan are rough around the edges kind of people, allegedly. Well, I don't know. I can be a rough around the edges, and I don't know, man. I have another one. Hold on a second.
I feel like you poured a lot into this movie, but then you turned around and you were just as supportive of Ryan. Yeah. What is it like to...
And my hair care company, Blake Brown, my goodness gracious.
Why are you on the red carpet of your film, cross-promoting Deadpool and Wolverine and your hair care line? This is at the film premiere, you guys.
It's been crazy.
You can't always tell people you love their movies, but I love this one. So seriously, thank you for taking the time.
Oh man, thanks.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I'm going to jump into this, and Blake, I'm going to start with you. Most of us, if we're lucky enough to run into a celebrity in public, we only have a few moments to maybe.
She's contradictions, but I'll act with a monkey. And then I got no pet monkey. Yeah. Chuck has a matching pet monkey with coordinating outfits, and I was like, I would love to be part of the show, but I can't act with a monkey. And then I got a few of them.
Like cast members.
Maybe it would be.
Well, I met Blake. I worked with.
Is every color.
Yes. Your scenes, like we saw you.
That shouldn't be happening. Or what's that shouldn't be happening.
Blake was getting called out for telling Justin about the intimacy coordinator. That's not the video I wanted to share. Let me find it. I have an actual video I wanted to share. I have a lot of videos here. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, and then
Familiar, were you with the...
Okay, so I just want to like put this out there. This to me is like the walking contradiction of Brandon Sklenar. I don't know if you watched the film. I think he's a very mediocre actor. He's also not a heartthrob to me. I don't find him attractive. I find him very boring. He's got, I don't know, his Atlas portrayal was really to me. And when I just look at him, I just think, you know, I'm not like, there's nothing to me that's like stands out about him. And he's been trying to like get on this trope that we need to really remember what this book is about and what this whole thing is about. He was asked if he was familiar with this book before he got the script. Listen to this.
How familiar were you with the novel going into this? And then what was your initial response to reading the script?
To be honest with you, I wasn't aware of the novel at all. I read the script and I thought it was profound the way that they were able to sort of get into generational trauma and, the relationship aspect with Ryle and Lily. And it definitely hugely spiked my interest when I read the book. And then, I immediately, in my own mind, and related it to a lot of women I've known in my life and women I currently know who have gone through situations similar to that.
FYI, everything he just said is like he's making that up on the fly. You can always tell when like someone's lying when they're like, yeah, like, okay, so really what he just admitted is he didn't read the book. He didn't know anything about the book. He's using like language like, oh, I found it riveting that they were really able to show the generational trauma. Blake's version didn't give me a very good understanding of the generational trauma because her mom's character was basically written out of the script. Thank you, Michelle, for your super chat. I really appreciate it. And thank you, other Mona, for your super chat as well. He's working really hard for an answer. Correct. Like, oh, I don't know. Like, and so, yeah, and he's wearing a tank top and a blazer. Like, who dressed this guy's? You guys, I don't really care about what people dress, but okay. When I saw that, I was like, are we really supposed to believe that this guy is smart enough to come up with his own thoughts and feelings? Maybe not. But, I found this video on TikTok.
It Ends With Us movie.
Okay. And I want to share this with you because I want this to be something that you guys take away from this video. Blake will never be able to answer to the fact that there was a whole world on Book Talk that made Colleen Hoover famous. And she will never be able to take away from the fact that Colleen Hoover was being canceled before this film came out. Half of Book Talk hates her now. And a lot of people didn't want to see the film. And then when they saw the way that Blake was putting out the movie, got angry. This was all organic. And the backlash that she received originated on TikTok and it spread everywhere else. So Blake will have a really hard time, in my opinion, claiming a smear campaign when you have videos like this, which is before the purported smear campaign started.
The promo is literally making me sick. Colleen Hoover's It Ends With Us has been a highly contested book because it features domestic violence, and a lot of people, including myself, feel like it is not handled with care. There was literally a coloring book that was going to come out about it, but she realized it was insensitive after a lot of backlash and took it back. She didn't make it. But she only did that because people got mad. And I know that now, looking at this movie promo coverage, that features a lot of stuff about Deadpool and Wolverine, and Blake Lively's husband and mom confronting her romantic love interest in the movie. All this promo is just so unserious for a very, very serious topic. Not to mention the fact that Blake Lively coincidentally just launched her hair care brand at the same time all this movie press has been coming out. Because she knows the hype surrounding the movie is going to bring more people to her page, and they're going to see this. So now you're just capitalizing off of a story about domestic violence. But I have yet to see one promotion for the movie talking about the community that they're trying to uplift. The topic is incredibly danced around, which is, one, irresponsible because people who suffer from domestic violence would want a warning that this is the content they're going to consume. And two, just makes it feel like a cheap gimmick plot twist that you're not supposed to know ahead of time.
So this was a prevailing thought by people on Book Talk, by the way. So how does Blake Lively answer to the fact that this was what people on Book Talk were saying about her, right? Like, how does she answer that this backlash was starting right before the film came out and even before? right? This woman's TikTok is one of many that I found. And she wants to blame Justin for this organic woman's opinion. It's like she thinks that people are stupid and don't have a memory of what she did on the press tour, and we're supposed to forget, and now we're supposed to blame Justin. I found so many of these kinds of videos that I was like, she can't be serious that she actually thinks that this was done by Justin. Here's another one.
This is your friendly reminder that this book is about breaking a generational cycle of domestic abuse, and it is not the movie for you to don your florals, grab your besties, and go in for a cute little rom-com, okay? Like, take it seriously. This is not a lighthearted movie.
So how does she explain that there was TikTokers that were criticizing her for the things that she claims Justin Baldoni planted into the media through a smear campaign? How does she, and think of it from Justin's perspective. What incentive does Justin have to smear her when his movie is the one in theaters? The last thing Justin, as the director and the owner of the production company, wants to do is smear the lead actress. Why would he want to do that? Why would Justin want to damage the film that he put half the money into, that paid for her salary? I don't think she even thinks about, I'm convinced that Blake doesn't live in logic. Like, she lives in a world where she truly believes her lies. And I feel bad for anyone that's on the receiving end of a frivolous lawsuit and smear campaign by a narcissist. It is terrible. Here's another one.
This is my hot take. I may not be consuming enough content surrounding this movie. However, does anybody else feel like the trailers, the press, the overall vibe, It Ends With Us, is giving flowers and happiness and chick flick, romantic comedy, everything that this movie is probably not going to be about? I just don't want like young girls or moms to be taking their daughters and thinking like this is gonna be just like this cute little movie. It's triggering. The man is an abuser. I literally asked my husband last night during a commercial break, I said, what do you think that movie that we just saw that trailer for is about? And he was like, I don't know. Is it like a chick flick? No, it's not. It's her. Spoiler alert. Check your triggers. This might be a tough watch. And I just had to put this PSA out there.
So this woman saw the trailer. This is before the movie was even released, okay? And she felt so compelled to speak out and warn people that if they go watch the movie, it's not what they think they're going to go see. I mean, this is how badly her PR was going, that you had women taking time out of the day to make videos to be like, hey, you guys, this film is really about domestic violence. And if you're going in there thinking it's a rom-com, you might come out really triggered. I mean, kudos to these creators on TikTok that took the time to speak and warn people. These women clearly care more about the survivors that might go into this film and not be warned. And it's, you know, when you're talking about a concept as damaging as domestic violence, and you're going to ask other survivors that are going to go there, and 1 in 4 women, by the way, is a victim. 1 in 4 women. So your audience, 25% of your audience, day one, minimum, are going to be victims. And you're not warning them that they're about to go watch a movie about domestic violence. Now, if you're someone that's triggered by it, what's that going to do to you? You could have like a panic attack. Your PTSD could get triggered. In the age of Me Too, it's like spitting in our face how it's made into a rom-com. Blake is too conceited and entitled to carry 0 weight. And, you know, to get back to that point, in the age of Me Too was Blake failed to acknowledge the victims of domestic violence during her promotion. And today she wants all of us and the victims who she ignored to believe that she is a victim now. Can you imagine the projection and the gaslighting that the victims have gone through? So they've been told from the front end that it's not about domestic violence, it's a rom-com. And now, after they've been ignored and they were completely sidelined and they weren't acknowledged, now she's asking these same victims to view her as a victim and then saying, if you don't believe me, you're going to kill the Me Too movement. When she literally killed their moment. How often do we see a film that actually addresses domestic violence? How often do we see on television a show that addresses it? It's such a taboo subject. And this could have been an opportunity to shine a huge spotlight on this problem. Let's just say it's about hope and flowers. Yeah. Was a child of DV in previous times when no one talked about DV. Blake's version doesn't begin to show the depths of the pain that it causes. Valid point. Yes. Thank you. So you're asking us to ignore, you ignored the victims, and now you want the victims to acknowledge you. And I think the backlash that she's getting right now is this from the victims. I think the victims are saying, no, you ignored me. And everything that you're saying happened to you, that's just like, you're flipping it, right? So like she's taking what they went through and she's saying that she's the victim now. It's like the most narcissistic gaslighting situation you can go through. Yes, and she thinks that survivors are weak and she never bothered to look at the reality of DV. Correct. Now, for those of you that haven't been able to, like, no one offered you resources, there's the national hotline. It's the National Domestic Violence Hotline. It's the hotline.com, I believe. And you can get resources on the warning signs for DV. They have a 24-hour day hotline. They do safety plans. They have resources. You can even get local resources. I think, if I'm going to be quite honest, I'm pretty confident that the National Domestic Violence Hotline didn't partner with Colleen Hoover and this book because they had previously criticized the book. And I think that Justin had to work with a company like No More because the bigger companies, the bigger nonprofits wouldn't have touched this movie with a 10-foot pole. There was a lot of domestic violence shelters that widely, like vocally criticized Colleen Hoover's book and said that it's a terrible depiction, unrealistic, and dangerous precedent to send, specifically about allowing your abuser to hold a baby while you ask for a divorce, and not discussing in any depth in the book, you know, filing police reports, getting therapy, going to get services. In fact, none of that is addressed. And they also criticized Colleen Hoover for humanizing the abuser in a way where you are supposed to feel sorry for him, and that the reason why he's doing it is because of his childhood, and that he had this really traumatic childhood, and That's why he hurt Lily, when it was victim blaming of Lily. It was never Lily's fault ever for what she went through. So none of the legitimate domestic violence organizations wanted to partner with Colleen Hoover. My friend's identity is given the ID. I'm sorry. Nothing screams guilty than like a contradiction. Correct. I think Blake knows a thing or two about domestic violence, if I'm going to be honest. If I learned anything from Ryan's motion to dismiss, I would venture to say that she is a victim of it herself. I don't like Blake, and you can be a very unlikable person and still be a victim. And I would venture to say that Ryan's behavior has all of the warning signs and red flags of an abuser. His reaction and his interference in her work, his lack of boundaries with her and her employer, his sabotaging of her project, creating all of these obstacles for her to have to go back to work, yelling at her boss. Like, all of these to me are signs of a violent, abusive partner. These are not the normal signs of a support. This is not supportive husbands don't go to these lengths. My husband doesn't get involved with my work. I mean, plus, if my husband was talking to my boss, he would be talking to me, and it would be kind of weird if he was yelling at my boss because he would be yelling at me. You know what I mean? But like, Ryan shows a lot of red flags to me. There is so much love. The junket, the press junket thing was really uncomfortable too, right? And then just to remind you,
there to be the actor and ready to get the gig, I wouldn't reveal that I actually need to have authorship in order to feel fulfilled. So I think that for them, sometimes that might have felt like a rug pull, because you're like, you're trying to assert yourself into something that we didn't hire you to do. And so it was a really strange position to be in, because I felt like, I don't want to just like be an actor. Like, I want to have more authorship. So I think that it's about, knowing what I want and what I need, and representing that from the outset. And if people are into that and want to collaborate with me for all I feel like I need to offer and bring to a job, then those are the people I should collaborate with. And if I see that it's people who are, whether this is in business.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Dragonfly. I'm so sorry. Get well soon. I don't believe it's about Colleen's mother. I don't either. I don't believe the story is about Colleen's mother. I think Colleen, as much as Blake, is profiting off of the pain of victims with this book. And I think that Colleen is very ignorant and extremely uneducated about domestic violence, though she claims to be a product of domestic violence. It actually floors me how uneducated she is about domestic violence. She actually justified in her Facebook group, the cohort's Facebook group, that it doesn't matter if the husband's abusive, they still get rights to their child. And her book took place in Massachusetts, and a domestic violence shelter in the state of Massachusetts had to literally come out and say, Colleen, because in her book, she said that a man still has legal rights, and it was taking place in Boston, and the freaking DV shelter in Boston had to come forward and say, that's a lie. There's literally this law in Boston and in Massachusetts that states if there are incidences of violence, even if it's not reported to the police, it can be grounds for parental termination. So when you have domestic violence shelters literally like having to warn readers about how badly constructed the book is, it's truly eye-opening and like mind-boggling to me that any of these companies that are now partnering with her are making films about her stuff, because I read the book and it was terrible. I hated the book. I hated the book because she said there are no bad people, there are just bad decisions. And that's a fucking lie. There are definitely bad people that are absolutely bad to the core. And it's not just one decision that they make that makes them bad. I mean, did any of you guys watch my coverage for Josh Duggar? Are we going to say that Josh Duggar just made one mistake and he's just not he's a good person that just happened to download and abuse his sisters? He just made a bad decision. It's just, there's a whole, yes. So getting back to this, she pulls the rug and takes things away from people. So yes, she said there were no bad people. What was the quote? This is the quote. There's no such thing as there are no such thing as bad people. We're all just people who sometimes do bad things. There is no such thing as bad people. We're all just people who sometimes do bad things. So I'm just going to say it, like, if you're going to schmurder someone or unalive someone, that would Michael Lisi. Sorry. I love when like the troll accounts start showing up. And, but there are actually bad people. There are bad people. Yes, she did. I made that video. You saw that video here. Let me show it to you. I'll find it. So I'm just going to be completely honest. I don't know if there's anyone that's on Reddit that's in those Reddit groups, but they have been sharing some of the videos that I've made and they're not linking my Instagram account. And it could just be that they're not even thinking about it. So these are getting shared into Reddit, but it's actually being sourced from my Instagram or from my YouTube, and they're just taking it and putting it there, which is totally fine. My content is free to share, but these same channels or pages often will get angry if you take things from them and you don't source them. So if you do see things that have a specific way of writing, you'll know it's me. 1 second, let me find it.
A film about domestic violence. And this isn't a film about domestic.
So if you're ever on Reddit and you see this sort of purple, that's me. You'll just know that this is me. That font, that purple. If you see a video that's like that, that's me. I was the same account that found the bite video.
Violence. And this isn't a film about domestic violence. It's a film that covers a lot of things, from first love to being an entrepreneur and opening your first shop and having all your dreams come true, to falling in love, to finding a new best friend, to domestic violence, which you don't hear all of those things in one place. But you know, this isn't a story, this isn't a love story, this isn't a love triangle. You know, this isn't a story, this isn't a love story, this isn't a love triangle, and this isn't a film about domestic violence. And this isn't a film about domestic violence. And this isn't a film about domestic violence.
I re-looped and like did the domestic violence part, and I just kept chopping it up and duplicating it, because that I do sometimes watermark. I get overwhelmed and it takes forever to make them. So sometimes I'm not even thinking. And oftentimes people share and they actually share my videos. And like I said, it's not that big of a deal, but a lot of these videos are getting shared on Reddit, and they're not linking my Instagram account, which is fine. I just wish they would source me. because I will source if I find things on Reddit all day. Okay, so there was one other one I wanted to show you. Yeah, what was the film about? Word salad, basically. And then if you didn't see,
It was before his Brazilian butt lift too. So like,
so Blake is suing Justin for a hostile work environment, by the way. And this is how she treated Brandon at the premiere at Bookman.
like it was before his Brazilian butt lift too. So like, we have to show.
I just couldn't fit it in. I just couldn't fit it in before the film.
I know. Isabella and I made these jeans today because we're really good with iron patches. Anyway, we're excited for you guys to see it. It's not done, but it's close enough. On August 9th, you guys will see it. And I hope you guys, they were like, don't show them the movie. It's not done. I was like, they'll understand. We're just excited to share it, which is in the restaurant. Just a friendly reminder. When Atlas comes up, go on.
I say, what about you? What do you like?
I am fired now. And this is Brandon's last movie. So,
I'm retiring. Yeah. I'm moving to Belize.
yeah, you guys are gonna be like, not my Atlas. And then he's never gonna have a career again.
Yep.
No, I'm, you go ahead, you talk. Isabella and I made his jeans today. Check it out. Wait, you talk, you're charming.
I'm Brandon, I play Atlas.
So she's like touching him. She's talking about a Brazilian butt lift, and she wants him to show his butt to the audience. She was the producer on the film. She's representing Wayfair. She is supposed to be one of the employers of Brandon, and this is how she's treating him. If this was reversed and it was Brandon doing this to Blake, or if it was Justin doing this to Blake, Blake would call this sexual harassment. She would say that he sexually assaulted her. She touched him, so she would accuse him of touching her inappropriately, looking at her butt. She would accuse him of objectifying her by looking at her butt. So if the shoe fits, I'm just saying, if you're a victim, rules for thee, but not for me. Exactly. But we're at 2.5 hours, and I don't want this to be a super long live so people can come back and digest. So I just want to say thank you guys for being here. Thank you to everyone that donated to the channel, to every single person that gave a super chat, to those of you that joined as members. Thank you so much. Make sure before you go to hit the thumbs up. And then if you want to share this video with your friends, and if you haven't subscribed yet, click the subscribe button, set your notifications on for all. And I've really enjoyed this conversation today, and I'm so invigorated with this new topic. It's been nice to expand this channel to things outside of cults for a minute and to talk about something else. So thank you all so much for being here today. I've really enjoyed it. And Blake and Ryan's marriage is a hot mess. Bye, guys.